Hey guys, it's Kwana back again with another review. Hope you guys are doing awesome. Alright, so this weekend I had an opportunity to go and see the newest film from Blumhouse. And you know me, I'm not too big on scary movies, but I do it sometimes just for you guys. And I saw Imaginary, which stars DeWanda Wise and Tom Payne. It was directed by Jeffrey Wadlow. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this movie and maybe why it'll have you second guessing your childhood stuffed animals. But before we do that, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and to come back and visit me for new reviews on things streaming and in theaters. Alright, so DeWanda Wise has been one of my favorite actresses of the last few years. She was in the Netflix TV series adaptation She's Gotta Have It, and she's been in a bunch of smaller works, and this is one of her biggest starring roles, and she also produces this film. She plays a character named Jessica, who is a children's book illustrator and writer who returns to her childhood home and learns that not only does she have to tackle some childhood trauma and demons, but perhaps her imaginary friends, which weren't so friendly. She goes there with her new husband Max and his two stepdaughters, Taylor and Alice. We're going to see a little bit more with Alice a little bit later in the review. I saw this movie with my best friend, and I will say a couple of things that this movie really brought to light, especially because as I'm reading other critics' reviews of the movie and also just navigating and evaluating my own experience in the film, I had such a fun time going to see this with my friend. It was our mommy free weekend. We got a chance to get away from the family, and we went to go see this movie because amazingly I wanted to. Mind you, if you remember correctly, and if you've seen my trailer reaction, I wasn't too thrilled with the trailer of this movie. I felt like it gave a lot away, and I didn't think that the movie would be good. Now, if I was a hardcore horror critic, I definitely think I would have a laundry list of issues with this movie, especially if I was looking for it to do something new and subversive and original. I don't think that this movie necessarily does that, although it does touch on some things I think in an interesting way that perhaps other films haven't quite done that. But I just think it was formulaic. It was an opportunity for DeWanda Wise to play in a horror movie. It was another collaboration between Jeff Wadlow and Blumhouse, and it was just a good time at the movie theater. I think definitely if you are looking for something that perhaps you can go see with your teens, if you're looking for something that you can go see for like a lighthearted, not too heavy hitting film, I think definitely this is it. It's nice and breezy at like an hour and 44 minutes. We were in and out, and I felt like the movie was pretty well paced. I know some people have complained about the act 1 in the movie or getting lost at the end of act 3. Act 2, definitely I will agree with most critics that that's where this movie shines, but I feel like overall the movie was well paced. We meet the character of Jessica in the first few minutes of the movie, and we are submerged into our first nightmare sequence of this film, and from there we slowly kind of unpack the dynamics of this new family that she has created for herself. We learn about what's happened to her parents, and then we begin to navigate the relationship between her and her stepdaughters. I will say that with regards to the writing of the script, some of the plot holes of the movie, I think the relationship with her and her husband Max, played by Tom Payne, was a little strange, the dynamic and the way that things were explained, or perhaps weren't explained. We eventually learned that he is a musician and he's about to go on tour. But he's supposed to be this very caring and concerned father, and he's pretty much non-entity for most of the movie. He's literally probably only in 7 minutes of this film at best. That's like a rough guesstimate, but yeah, he was not in this movie a lot at all, especially considering that he has like second byline in this film. This movie rests solely on the shoulders of DeWanda Wise, who is an amazingly competent actress and really navigates the emotions of this character, a woman who is still struggling with what's come of her family and tried to carve out a new one. At the same time, she has these new daughters, a 6-year-old named Alice and a 15-year-old teenage daughter named Taylor, who are her stepdaughters, and she's trying to develop a close relationship with them. Taylor is a very stereotypical angry, maudlin teenager, and I would have liked to see them play with those dynamics a little bit differently. She and her sister both come from their own traumatic and troubling background, and so one would expect her to be perhaps a little bit more mature than what she projects herself to be in the beginning of this movie, but she does gain a good bit of growth and development through this movie, and we get to see her develop into a much more mature character by the end. And so a lot of those feelings do eventually fade away, but I'll be honest, I did not like her character at the beginning of this movie, and I really wanted to see them explore beyond just the stereotypical teenage angst, because I definitely think, having known quite a few teenagers in my career as a high school teacher, most teenagers are really mature, especially when they have younger siblings. The ones with younger siblings definitely tend to be the most mature. So maybe in a way they were trying to go against the grain by making the older sister a little bit angry and reckless, but you know, I don't know, I didn't feel like that would be true for this character. Then we meet Alice, the actress who plays this character did an incredibly amazing job channeling the depth of emotions and the sadness and the fear and confusion that a 6-year-old would play and would have an experience in this film. I thought she did a great job, and she had a really good chemistry with DeWanda Wise's character of Jessica. As I said, I think just Tom Payne might as well have not even been in the film, because it was really not explained well his disappearance and lack of presence in the film, and I thought that was definitely a plot hole. Let's talk about the big bad in this movie, because this is a horror movie, guys, even with the PG-13 rating. I know a lot of people would wish that Blumhouse would go back to almost solely doing rated R movies. I definitely think like there's a lane that they're in, and that lane is the lane of making money, guys. And at the end of the day, PG-13 movies, especially in horror, gross a lot because people can take their families. You cannot take your young ones to go see a rated R movie. And while rated R movies can make a lot of money, at the end of the day, guess what? Childcare is expensive. And anytime you have to hire someone or find someone to watch your kids, yeah, that means you're cutting a large demographic of adults out of watching your movie as well. So while I might think that it doesn't serve every plot or every film premise, I definitely think this is one of those films, the premise serves the community of teens and preteens being able to see this movie. So I wasn't bothered by the PG-13 rating at all. Let's talk about the character of Chauncey, who is the teddy bear featured in this character. This is definitely a killer toy type of film, although it does play around with that premise quite a bit differently than perhaps movies like Child's Play or even Megan. Still dealing with the idea of childhood trauma and that manifesting itself in a killer toy. Chauncey is a stuffed animal that Alice finds in this home, and it becomes her imaginary playmate. It serves an outlet for her to have adventures and to find a source of joy in this tumultuous time in her life. Chauncey was scary, and I'm gonna tell you why Chauncey is scary, because everyone's not gonna have a Megan, everyone's not gonna have a Chucky, although I did have a My Buddy doll growing up, and he definitely went into a closet with a chair over the door after I first saw Child's Play. I'm not even gonna lie to you. But guess what? Most people do have. Most people have teddy bears, and Chauncey looks like a little broken down corduroy from the books. I definitely thought that was a smart idea to go with the traditional teddy bear, because there have been movies about imaginary playmates before. Anybody who was a child of the 80s might remember a little movie called Drop Dead Fred. Having a teddy bear is a source of comfort for almost every child in the world, and it is a symbol of childhood and of youth and innocence. So to have that and play with the idea of what happens if that teddy bear is a monster, that was a frightening idea. Now, there are quite a few jump scares, and depending on your level of scaredy or scaredy catness, they might not scare you. I was jumping a lot, and this was me. That meme of Regina Hall from Scary Movie in the movie theater, that was me for most of this movie with my head under the jacket, because I scare easily and I don't like jump scares and they trigger me. So I was triggered for most of the movie, but because I was there with my friend, it was hilarious. We found that funny. The movie itself wasn't necessarily funny at all parts, but that was funny. Now, I didn't necessarily think that they needed this. There was one storyline in the film that I didn't think it was needed as much. It was the relationship between the teenage daughter Taylor and her next door neighbor. It was just there to again add to that idea of like teenage recklessness and angst. I felt like it was an unnecessary sequence in the film, but what it did do is it did allow for an extra jump scare, and it did allow for a character to be threatened that wasn't one of the main cast members. And so for that, I understood the ploy in it all, but I definitely think I would have rather that time be spent developing more into the relationship of the characters. I'm not going to get too far into spoilers, but be on the lookout for a major HIPAA violation to occur in this movie. And once you see it, we'll talk about it down in the comments, okay? Overall, guys, I definitely think, listen, sometimes we have to take movies not so seriously. Sometimes we have to just go into a movie and have a good time. If you're a hardcore horror movie lover and you're very serious about your horror, this is not going to be the movie for you. If your whole thing is you love this new era of like highly psychological Jordan Peele-esque type of horror movies, this is not necessarily going to be your film. But if you just want a movie to kind of have fun with, but that still tinkers with making you think a little bit, then I definitely think this one is for you. Let's talk about the set, especially when we get into the imaginary world. Gorgeous sets. The MC Escher references, Alice in Wonderland references, Labyrinth, callbacks to the Labyrinth with Goblin King. I thought that was chef's kiss. I delighted in seeing that that sequence and that moment. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed and had myself a good time at the movie theater. And while this was not a perfect movie, I definitely would grade on a curve over here. I definitely would get this movie a B-. And I think if you like something lighthearted movies, go see it. You'll have a good time. DeWanda Weiss, we definitely want her to get more starring roles over here. And I thought she actually was really good in this movie. So if you want to support a strong actress, if you want to support her getting opportunities again, and if you just want to have a good little time at the theater, then go check out Imaginary. Maybe go see it for a matinee so you don't break the bank. And I'll see you guys in the next video, okay? Until then, toodles.